Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm gonna talk about Poison Cremation again. This will be the last video, showcasing this build and explaining stuff. I've done multiple iterations of this build, which I will go through in this video, and this will be, let's say, the video that I'm gonna post and send to people for future reference, maybe for 3.26 and so on. But if you're still playing Poison Cremation, it's a video that should be interesting to you, because by doing this version, you are better off, right? So maybe you are still grinding and still having fun with the league. So I guess this is still, let's say, important, right? So, well, what are the changes, right? The biggest change is that I changed the approach. So rather than increasing the poison damage or chaos damage or elemental damage, because I tried all versions to see how it works, because there were different problems like delayed damage, and this caused us to, having a character that is not as responsive as I would like it to be. Then some bosses were surviving explosions, right? So you have a pack of monsters, you blow up the pack of monsters and the boss still lives, and then if its monster speed cannot be reduced under base value, it comes to your pump, you need to face tank it, and you need to, let's say, spam skills against this boss while other lanes are also progressing. So then you end up, let's say, having a stressful situation, or you might even lose the encounter, right? So now I learned few things about this build, and I've learned few things how to make this build better, what really works. And it took me some time, but I was not only focused on this build, right? I also spent a lot of time collecting data and trying to understand what's going on there. So yeah, I had like phases. Like initially after League started, I was focused on the build to make everyone be able to farm Ravaged maps, to do the corrupted Ravaged maps, run Twist of Fate and stuff. Then I was, a little bit dedicated to finding what's the best strategy. And then I had some vacation time, and then I was dedicated to collecting data about Twist of Fate, so how to play around that. And the results will be posted next week. I already finished all the runs. I'm gonna do one more run to document how this build plays out in a full hour gameplay. But now I had some more time to, dive a little bit more into the build. How can we make it better, right? So this was my last attempt. If this didn't work, I would just give up on this build and probably play Chieftain. However, this actually worked, and this is quite good build, right? And why it's good? Because it's super cheap. So the changes I've done are not making the build more expensive. This is the most crucial information, right? Because, if we were to add, like, I don't know, 200 or 150 divine items to the build, sure, it would get better, but does this makes, I don't know, any sense? Or does this make this build, good to start next league? Not really, right? Because you won't be able to find 150 divines worth item on week 1, where you should be able to already farm corrupted Ravaged maps. So yeah, so for this reason, it's nice that they found a way how to make this build much better within the same budget, right? So sure, some of those items won't be accessible in first days, because getting this implicit on Asena's Glove, maybe this is not that cheap. Maybe it will cost you a few divines, right? Maybe getting this implicit on the armor is, maybe it's not that necessary, but it's nice, right? So maybe we can live without it. So we will see next league, and so on, right? So this build is pretty min-maxed. It doesn't have any crazy items, so it has decent rare items, but I think you can get all of them for like 100C. The uniques are corrupted because we are at this point of the league where you can find. I use, this synthesized ring. I spotted on POE Ninja from one of the players that followed my guide, and this is now quite good because we can add an additional aura by using Dragon Fangs, and this is only possible because we switch armors. So I will explain all the changes soon, but first I wanted to show you the gameplay, because I can talk that this build is better and stuff, but I think it's worth to see how this build plays out, and we will only jump into the Ravaged map for a brief moment. and then we will jump to POB, and full session run through will be uploaded later to my channel, so you can see how it really works out. And the best part about this build is that we utilize imbuing tower grants 50% increased damage. This is very important because we really care about those stats that increase the damage, not like spell damage, not like fire, chaos damage, just damage, because corpse explosion is secondary damage, so not everything increases it. So this is really good. All those increases go into our explosions. So as you can see, we are stationary. I will explain that in a moment, but we base our build on increased AOE. So yeah, we really want to have 201 increased AOE. We can go further, sure, and we can build some towers, but imbuing tower is really crucial, right? So if you have like 6 mod or something, you might want to put like glacial cage, right? You can put some freeze towers. If there's monster speed cannot be reduced under base value, you build Sentinel Tower, right? So Sentinel Tower is level 4 minion tower. It's a big minion that basically stops a boss for a brief second. And for our build, we basically just stand in a place, build some towers around, right? So this doesn't matter. You could probably do this towerless. However, I like to have some sort of safety, and sometimes you need to move, of course. So it's not like fully FK, and sometimes you need to cast a spell, right? So the spell lasts for more than 10 seconds. I think it's 12 seconds. So you are good to cast it from here and there, and it's good to cast it in different places, because some monsters keep poisoned and they deal delayed damage to other monsters in the same lane, even after you casted your cremation in different spot, right? So we are limited only to 1 geyser right now after 3.23 change, but yeah, we can cast it in different spots, right? So as you can see, I'm not even moving from the pump, so I'm protecting it a little bit with my body. We are not very tanky, so we sacrificed a little bit of HP. We sacrificed a little bit of our defensive layers, so we are not as tanky as previous iterations, but actually it's safer like that. You don't get that much chance to die when completing encounter, right? So all you're really worried about is to monitor this little map to see where are the red dots. We have such a big AOE, you only need to cast it, nearby, right? So everything else is killed. And by using different armor, we have way more energy shield, so we could drop inspiration. We no longer need inspiration. We can go with cruelty, which adds even more damage. And yeah, that's what it happens. And if you get hit, we have petrified blood setup, right? So you only need to press Flask, your life flask, right? So that's basically a very boring game. We stand in a spot, just trying to kill everything, and that's it. That's encounter completed. I didn't have to move. It's much faster than previous iterations because the AOE is so huge that it chains better. It kills all those mobs that get stuck within towers. Sure, sometimes the layout is that you need to travel to kill monsters, but yeah, but with bigger AOE it's easier to target them, and sometimes you just press cremation once and it kills few of those, right? So I think this was the quick showcase how the build currently works. And yeah, this was triple till 8 mod corrupted. It was Twist of Fate, right, map, so totally random mobs. So even though you could see I built some towers, they weren't that necessary, so it's just like a safety net, and you are still, you don't need to basically play, you stand still, right? Because we utilize one of the cluster nodes, which is Expansive Might, is that gives us 50% of increased AOE when we are stationary. We could actually stack on this, and that would give us even more AOE, but for that you would need Megalomaniac with low tolerance, right? So maybe let's jump to POB. And yeah, and now let's talk about all the iterations we had, right? So I will explain this version in a second, and let's start from all the previous versions. So this was the first version, the one from the build guide I made before the leak. So we had no cluster jewels in here. It was very simple build. It was supposed to clear ravaged mobs, and it was pretty hard to understand what will be the requirement, you know, like because we had so many changes with corpses, and you know, even grades was nerfed, and it was really hard to understand what worked. So this build worked in the last league, but this league, when playing more, you know, more maps with it, more, how to say it, more different mods combinations, I found out that this is not enough, right? So we had like 4.7 million DPS, and we had no AOE scaling here. It was, I think, not even that tanky because we didn't have grace in it. So it was completely different build from what we have now, right? And yeah, that was before the leak. Then this was my POB from day 2. So still no cluster jewel, so I went for those nodes there. So there were like few changes from the initial build, like I took those nodes, etc. But yeah, pretty much I targeted for what I prepared before the leak. And this was day 2 version, which had 2 million DPS. That was fine to clear, you know, triple teal, non-corrupted ravaged map on day 2, right? Then we had day 5 build. So here I already put the cluster jewel, right? So we use all the 3 nodes, Dark Ideation, Wicked Pole, and Unholy Grace. Then we use Distilled Perfection and Bruised for Potency. I was not using low tolerance at this point, right? And I think that was a mistake, even though I used low tolerance in here. You could also select here the critical damage, right? But we don't want that. We really want low tolerance in here, because we need 900% low tolerance. I mean, 3 low tolerances, which is 900 increased damage for poison, for first poison, right? So this was the build. We used different items a bit, you know, but overall I added Oriad's End here. Oriad's End is not that useful, so it's totally skippable. So yeah, this Megalomaniac was also like totally not, you know, not hit. So it was an okay-ish build. You could do corrupted maps with it, but you know, it was failing sometimes. I wasn't happy. It was like really struggling, you know, so I still, you know, thought maybe we can do something better. And this resulted in this version where we actually used 900% increased damage for first poison and single cluster jewel. So this is the version I played a lot of maps, and this worked really well. It had 6.5 million DPS, and yeah, we had quite good defensive layer. We changed our gloves to Ascendant gloves. So the previous iterations had problem with performance. So Hex Bloom and, you know, applying curses in the initial, as the initial version suggested, it was really bad with performance. This version with Ascendant gloves somehow made exploding corpses and monsters much better. So it was so it is much easier if you don't have 2 FPS to manage your map, right? So if you get lag, it's not good, because on the server things are still going on. It's only you that cannot control your character, and this is really bad for Ravaged maps. So this solved few problems, but yeah, I think it was quite okay build. We used Light of Meaning for extra chaos damage, which was fine. We had better Watcher Eyes in this version. We used Endurance Charges in this version, Atiri Step to cap our spell suppression, right? So this version was, I thought it's a final version that basically, you know, you cannot go beyond that with 900% increased damage for your first poison, and you know, not going like super crazy with budget, like, I don't know, 2 mirrors build. So at the budget, I think this was pretty optimized. However, I took for granted that we need to maximize chaos and poison damage, which was not true, because it turns out our damage comes from, you know, explosions, and the poison is, you know, good to kill off bosses, but first you need to apply enough poisons so you can stack poisons, and increasing AOE not only makes the explosion damage bigger. So initially, you know, the boss is having much lower HP, but then the more monsters can, how to say, apply poison to a boss, because you know, the monsters come like in a sequence. They are, you know, deployed in a line. So the bigger AOEs, the first monster will, you know, have more chances to also include boss in its explosion, right? So you kill like first monsters in a first monster in a lane, then it kills the second, then it kills the third, and only then, you know, the third, fourth, and fifth apply poison to boss when you have a small AOE. While if you have a large AOE, all the monsters that die in a range of, you know, they have enough range to damage the boss. And this is what we want. We are not concerned about monsters. So we always wanted to kill bosses off, because if bosses leak, you are fucked. I mean, yeah. So that's it, right? So AOE is really the answer. And by changing the approach, the build got significantly better. You could see how the gameplay is now. Like I said, I will upload full hour gameplay with it, so you can compare with previous videos, the same videos I uploaded, to see the difference. So going to the difference, so I will explain basics of this build, right? So maybe that's some, you know, maybe it's still worth to watch the original build guide, but I will be explaining the basics of this build, right? So let's start with 3. So we really want elemental overload because we don't want to crit. This is like 27% of damage for one Atlas node. I mean, we need to go there only for this and this, but this is also like, I believe, 20% of damage. So those nodes are really strong, and we still want to come here, right? This node is to generate us endurance charges, and I think at this point, when we kill everything off screen, I might be actually removing those to add additional cluster jewel, right? Because we cannot use another megalomaniac, because we need Watcher's Eye and we need corrupted blood immunity. So I think I will be using another Expansive Might, Assert Dominance cluster jewel, but we will talk about this in a second. Anyway, I think those nodes are optional. So this is the more tankier version. This works for me because sometimes you get hit. The new endurance charges are pretty strong, and also Red Dream adds you 10% fire damage as extra chaos damage. This is also useful. So all in all, those nodes are pretty strong and pretty defensive. However, if you wanted to have more even more AOE, and this is more by 72, this cluster jewel is 72% more AOE if you are stationary. That's a lot because we have 201%, so that's a third more. So you can choose that, right? But for this version, for this video, let's go with I'm currently playing. And here we have increased reservation mana. This is important because now we, you know, now we want additional aura, which is Herald of Agony, but about that in a second. So this is mostly because of that. Additional mana is also nice to you know, to allocate. I mean to use an additional aura, and that's from it. Here we have also a nice node that we could use, but we don't have more points. So maybe if you are 98, we could decide whether you go for a cluster jewel or you go for more AOE damage. Both are fine. Not sure what's actually better. This is 3.4. Maybe actually this is I think better. This gives us way more hit DPS, which is nice. So about that in a second. Here we go for some, you know, for increased damage and for increased corpse life, and I'm not sure how important is that. Maybe we could totally skip it, because our damage doesn't come from our own corpses. Our own corpses are only used to initiate and kill first monster, right? So because we kill stuff off screen, we have enough time to kill it. So 10% of corpse health, which is like 5k. If we do this, it doesn't take away a lot of our DPS, right? So it's not that important. It's something, but you know, the POB damage is also not that accurate because we based it on our corpses, not on, you know, ravaged corpses. So ravaged corpses are like 350k. So that's 37 million. That's the realistic damage we deal on a ravaged maps. That's why everything melts. But if you are like trying to kill something with your own corpses with desecrate, you only have 11 million. So that's huge diff, right? But anyway, I think this might be skippable. I might play around this to see if we could get rid of this. It seems nice, but well, I don't know. It gives us 2+ my corpses. I'm not sure if in current meta with current changes this is really important, and 4 points is quite a lot. We could use another cluster jewel, and keep our defensive layers. We also have some additional nodes which we could use if we had extra points for additional dot damage. So yeah, so this is it. Then we have our first cluster jewel, and they are both the same: Unholy Grace, Unwavering Evil, and Wicked Pal. Again, you can assign this node. It's also nice if you have extra points. So again, if we get rid of this, maybe going for those two, oh, we actually have those nodes here, but going for those two nodes, yeah, could be nice, right? Then we have Caster Mastery, right? So this is required to open the chests with a skill, right? So how you do that, I explained this in a separate video, but basically you need to stand in front of chests, like there are obstacles like this wall, so this won't be opened, right? You need to stand in open area. It doesn't matter where you cast, it matters where you stand, right? So this is this chest mastery, and we use this because we have a couple of wheels that we could use. Here is sorry, where's the caster mastery here? Here is casting speed, which we completely don't need because we don't really spam casting at all with this build. Our playstyle is press desecrate once, press cremation once, and stay AFK. You know, stay AFK, let the AOE scale, and that's it. So we prefer spells to have increased AOE, so it doesn't increase our corpse explosion. This is our target. This is why I also don't use increased AOE in our 6-link. It doesn't do anything for us. So as you can see here, we have increased area of effect, it's global. Then we have our cluster jewels, which add global AOE, and the spell AOE only increases, you know, those fire explosions, which means we can target our cremation at the end of the screen, so it will reach the map further, helping us to initiate the explosions. However, only those explosions, I mean those nodes on cluster jewels and our armor and of course Megalomaniac increase the corpse explosion. So this is what we want to increase, right? So this is useful. I think this is the best what we can get from caster wheel. However, it's not that good, not as good as Expansive Might and Assert Dominance, right? This is that. Then we have, you know, Aura's Reservation wheel. Then we have basically Poison Master wheel. So the only reason why we want this is, okay, of course we penetrate some chaos resistance, but the most important is that this is our low tolerance and we need 3 of those, right? So this is first, and then we have 2 on cluster jewels, right? So we have low tolerance here and we have low tolerance here, total 900%. And I tried 600%, I tried 1200%, doesn't matter. It's 900 is enough, 600 is not enough, right? So this is just right amount. Then here we have spell suppression. You can get this on different ways, right? So this costs us 4 points. I don't care. You don't need to use Atziri boots, Atziri step boots, whatever you want, right? So for me, Atziri steps boots are really cheap and good. So I'm trying to explain how to play this build at the league start environment, and this is the way. You can do something else. You can get additional spell suppression from your Watcher's Eye, right? Because we have Grace, so there is this node where you get 12% spell suppression from your Watcher's Eye, you know, but getting dot with Malevolence and spell suppression with Grace gonna cost you a fortune in first week, right? So I think this node is really good for currency effectiveness, right? So we can get a lot for quite cheap because it's only 3 points. Then I have everywhere I could some tattoos of Tawoa, I can't even pronounce it, Tawoa Warrior, which increases our damage by 5%, our chaos damage by 5%, right? So I thought, well, intelligence is nice, but yeah, 5% of chaos damage is also nice. So I'm not sure how much we need those. You can use this, you don't need to. If you prefer having more energy shield to cast your spells comfortable, you can do, but with, you know, Carcass Jack, which adds how much? 216 energy shield, I think we are pretty fine to go for this tattoo, right? I have another tattoo. Where is it? Here I have a tattoo of Rama Shaman to cap my spell suppression. So I missed 4 points. I used 2 of those tattoos. So with, you know, those nodes, at series step, spell suppression on my cheap ass helmet. Where is my helmet? On my cheap ass helmet, I paid like 100C for it, and same for boots. It's like under 100C with. I just corrupted it and landed +1 socket gems. You don't need that, but you can have it. We still have some spare mana. Yeah, you need to fit, you know, 6th aura, sorry, but yeah, we have room. We can get rid of clarity and vitality to fit the aura, so there are plenty of choices, right? But we'll talk about skills in a second. So the most important is that we have a tattoo. You need to cap spell suppression with this build, right? And we cannot use, where is this node? Yeah, we cannot use the evasion mastery, which gives us 15% of spell suppression, because our gloves, Ascendant gloves, don't have you know, evasion, right? So it's not something we can use. For this reason, we can use something else in here, right? So I believe this is the best one. Increase evasion if we have been hit. So if you, because sometimes the monsters are like deployed in a sequence so that you get shotgunned, right? So the first time you get hit, it increases your evasion a bit so that it lowers the chance to get, you know, like hit again in a short time. So I think that's quite useful and worth a point. But yeah, this is it. So otherwise we would have 15% from here. We don't have that, so we need to find it somewhere else. And because those gloves don't have spell suppression at all, and we cannot use like on rare gloves implicit for additional spell suppression, yeah, we need to find something else. And for me, at series step is the answer. This is really cheap and good way of solving it. Then from important stuff, we have Light of Meaning, as in previous iterations, right? This is quite a lot, because I think we had 15 points assigned per 6. It's like 90% increased damage, which is kinda good to me. For 2 points, sure, and it still keeps original. It still gives you original values. So in POB it doesn't show, but here you can see, right? So we get what we had before plus 6% chaos damage. So that's kinda cool. Then here again we have some mana reservation. Here we have chaos damage over time and chaos resistance. Here we have 10% chaos damage against monsters who have energy shield. This is nice because those are a bit more tankier, even though chaos damage penetrates the energy shield. Yeah, it's still harder to initiate with our fire damage and you know, our geyser, the initial chain, you know, to start the chain reaction, right? To do the first skill. Oh, I think it's the most clear way of saying it. So 10% more, yeah, why not? I think for 1 point, this is really worth it. So here, yeah, here we have a spell suppression again. Here we have some damage over time. Here we have poison inflict damage 20% faster. Oh, I think we forgot about that. But here's again 15% more duration, which is also kind of nice. But overall, yeah, those nodes are pretty useful and I wouldn't swap them. And here again we have second cluster jewel. It's the same as the first one. We allocate those 2 nodes, I think, only in POB. I don't think I have it in game, so I'm not sure what. Yeah, I think POB just took this wrong, so we don't have those nodes. We don't need them, but yeah, they are kind of strong. So if you have spare points, you can try. If you have like 98 character or level 100 character, you can try with those nodes. Maybe you can get rid of this wheel, and that's gonna make it better. And again, for Megalomaniac, we need low tolerance and one of those, either Assert Dominance or Expansive Might. So right now, 1 month in, there are not many, you know, there's no big availability of those. There were many, but they are all offline. So what you can see, so you can really find something useful. So this adds 15% increased poison duration. What else? This is a bit of chaos resistance. We don't need that. This is a herald skills. This is increased damage, that could be useful, right? 20% is quite a lot. And you know, you can see, right, you can browse those, and you can of course use the other one. Let's go POE. So yeah, so this is the right setup, and this way we get 200% increased AOE, and this way we can basically stay at the pump, get the you know, get our imbuing tower with ring anointment for extra damage and kill everything off screen, right? So about items, we use on this version, I use corrupted, you know, corrupted daggers with increased damage over time. Important things are increased damage over time and increased fire damage, right? So you want this to be as high as possible, and I paid for those like 1 divine each, so those weapons are quite cheap. Again, helmet, it's cheap, 100C. Carcass Jack, I paid for it, I think like 5 divines right now. So right now 6 links are quite cheap. So this is a single, you know, single implicit corrupted item. It was quite cheap. You can, I think I 6 linked it myself. So if you don't know how to do that, maybe just quickly explaining, maybe to beginners, what's going on. You have those tainted currency where you can of course randomize the quality. So first you buy Carcass Jack, you try to corrupt it, or you buy the corrupted one with implicit, then you can give your armor 20% of quality. Then you can use Tainted Jeweler's Orb to add sockets. However, if you're gonna do that on 1 or 2 sockets, you're gonna pay a lot. Instead, you can go here. I think I need corrupted item. Do I have one? That will be faster. I should have something. Maybe we can corrupt this. No, it's already 6 linked. But anyway, maybe I can find. So for corrupted version, you also have to pay, you know, Val orbs, right? But this is the way. So you go here. You go for 5 sockets, and then you use Jeweler's Orb, right? If it goes to 4, I would still use Jeweler's Orb because it costs, I think, 150. Maybe we can corrupt this. Maybe we could corrupt this. Oh yeah. So it costs 70 actually. So yeah, it's better. It's better this way, and then simply apply Jeweler's Orb. Yeah, I basically hit 6th one, and now you wanna go for 5 linked sockets. Actually, sorry, you should be using this one. Yeah, that's why I thought it's 150. Yeah, so instead of 5 sockets, of course, we want 5 linked sockets, right? So if you have this and you already had 6 sockets, if not, maybe try Jeweler's Orb to add an additional socket after you do that, because we really need 5th socket. Or maybe try first, again, paying 70 for 5 sockets, then 5 linked sockets. That's no brainer. Then you are sure you have 6 sockets and they are linked, and then just use fusing, right? So you see, I was lucky. Within 1 try, I made 6 link, right? And this is the way how we gonna 6 link your armor in your first week. Then Ascendant touch with Despair on hit. So we can get Despair on hit with a ring. It can be either Delve ring, it can be either Hunter's, you know, influenced ring, and then you need to somehow roll it, or I don't know, it can be magic, and then you can add some exalts and stuff, or you can just simply buy it from the market. And this is what you need. You need to have Despair on hit, either ring or Ascendant gloves with this implicit, and Ascendant's gloves have temporal chain on hit, and this is what you want, right? So this is our curse setup, and yeah, there is nothing else to it, right? At Series Step, this is just for spell suppression, but yeah, getting +1 level implicit is nice, because we can have our auras 1 level higher and our enlighten 1 level higher. So yeah, this is the implicit. I think it's the best for us. Then we have Dragon Fangs, which increases our cremation by 3 levels. So I initially played with +1 level amulet, because I found it like day 2 and I wasn't playing around it. It was quite good one. I didn't need to change it. +3 level of cremation. So the reason why I hesitated is because more levels means more mana, and when we played Lightning Coil, it was already a problem at some maps, right? So I didn't want to have +3 levels, because that would mean I need inspiration, and even then you cannot spam your skills, or sometimes when you have this stupid mod that gives you 60% less recovery of energy shield, it was really like, you know, slowly regenerating, and you waited and you waited and you had to face tank bosses, and that wasn't nice. So I thought more levels of cremation, that's even gonna make it worse. But when we swapped to Carcass Jack, actually we have enough energy shield to play. And yeah, because even if you have sometimes to cast more gazers, right? So you have monsters, you have difficult map with monster speed cannot be reduced and their base value, and your monsters approaching from different way. First of all, AOE is so big that when you are around the pump, explosions from one side will kill the boss on the other side, which is crazy, but this is how it works. So you don't need to spam skills that much anymore. And second of which, adding cremation levels lowers the time to start the chain reaction. So it lowers the time to kill your first monster, which will then explode the bosses and stuff. So this is actually nice. So if we go for this, we also get increased reservation efficiency and reduced attribute requirements, and we like both of those things, right? So we also like all attributes and elemental resistances. So this is a really good item. This is, I think, the cremation version is like 10 chaos, so it was also cheap in the beginning. And I anointed nomadic teachings because this is golden black. Previously I was using prismatic skin, but when silver oil is 60C, I think it is always cheaper to go for nomadic teachings. It's basically the same stuff, right? But cheaper. So I think that's kind of a good tip to use this instead if you use the prismatic skin, right? Before. So this is for our amulet, and if we use this amulet and we get additional reservation, we could actually get rid of our support gems for Plaguebearer and go for one more aura, which is Herald of Agony. And when we use Herald of Agony, we can use this ring. I think that's the most that's the only reason why you want to use Herald of Agony, because this ring, right? So when we use chaos damage modifiers, we get 72% increased chaos damage, and I rolled this with divine orbs. So you know, I spent like 5 divines on this ring. I was pretty lucky. And you know, I bought also the version with increased fire damage and chaos damage as implicit. Maybe you can find something better. I was looking for, you know, as much damage as I can. So this is what I chose. And we also get increased mana reservation efficiency of Herald of Agony here, right? So this way we are still having 40 mana after we fire all auras. This is kinda good thing, because if you don't have this implicit on boots, maybe you will be around closer to 0, right? So this is a good indication that in the league start environment it will be cheaper to make it happen, right? And I think that's important. Going back to rest of the items, then we have another ring, that's basically to cap resistances and strength, right? So yeah, we don't need energy shield that much here, but yeah, whatever. So again, I bought this for 100C. There are not many rare rings that, you know, that time in the league, so anything good is like 20 divines, because you know there are not enough people playing anymore. And the belt, same stuff. We want to have abyssal sockets, so ideally you could have corrupted one here to have your corrupted blood immunity, and then, you know, use something better for your jewel here, or maybe even use megalomaniac instead of this cluster jewel. So it depends, right? But I have my corrupted blood immunity here. I could be flexible, and you know, Stygian wise is good because it helps and makes life easier. If you miss like, you know, 5 dexterity here, you know, 3% of resistance there, some life, some increased damage over time, right? You know, you can really add the puzzle together with this item. So I like it. I like this item because of that. And the only thing we want from our belt is to cap reses, get some life possibly. And yeah, Stygian wise gives you more slots and more stats, nothing else, right? So again, for Hypnotic Guide, we'll go with whatever you want. I'm just capping my stats with it. That's the end of the story. So for Flask, I find this Flask actually the best. It's you know, it removes 10% of life recovered from mana, but we don't use mana. We use Eldritch Battery, right? I forgot to mention, right? Yeah, we use Eldritch Battery to cast our spells. So this is our mana. So we don't care, and we really like this 58% increased life recovered because we use Petrified Blood, and this works that if we get a large hit, it's, you know, it's transformed into damage over time. So we really like high regenerate per second, and that's how we stay alive, right? Before I was playing with Instant Flask. It was good because you had instant life, but you know, when you run out of Flask charges, you were fucked and you were dying, and that wasn't good. This is better, so use this Flask. This Flask is better. Dying Sun, yeah, I mean, initially I wasn't like keen of it because it was expensive and I didn't see it giving us that much because we no longer scale our damage from projectiles. However, because we have such a large AOE and we cover so big, let's say, part of the map, more projectiles mean, you know, faster chain reaction initiation and covering even, you know, more map with our projectiles. So I think this is really great Flask, and now when it gives +5 maximum res, it's just, you know, better than normal Ruby Flask. And because we don't need that many, you know, we don't stack armor, so we don't need increased armor from our Magic Flask. We can have it, right? So we don't need anything else from our Ruby Flask. So from Sapphire Flask, I have spell damage leech as energy shield. This is because when you have less recovery from a flask, this is really helpful. This helps you leech some, you know, some energy shield. Initially, this was because I wanted to use the gloves with increased damage while leeching. It's like, I don't know, 45 or 50% of increased damage when you leech. That's also nice, but we use Ascendant gloves, so this is no longer useful. So this is just to help us with energy shield recharge, the same as implicit on, you know, I believe it's Eldritch or Eater of the World implicit that increased energy shield recharge. This is to help us with those mods that decrease our energy shield regeneration, which is our mana, because we have no other choices, right? So this is, let's say, our weak spot, this mod, because it makes a map bit harder. However, I think we can mitigate it at least a bit with this flask. Then, of course, all the magic flasks should have increased effect and reduced duration, because while playing ravaged maps, your flasks are almost always up. I mean, you get so many charges, and we used when charges reach full, because you don't want to press your flask at all. I'm lazy, right? You can go with use at flask at end of flask effect, but sometimes you have to press the button, right? When you, I don't know, there are situations where you don't have enough charges when the, you know, flask ends and stuff. So I really prefer when charges reach full, and that's my way. You can do something else if you prefer. Then important stuff is 60% increased evasion. We want 60% here, so I think that's the most important flask. And we want Sulfur Flask for 40% increased damage, which also affects our explosions. So again, like I mentioned, it's not spell damage, it's increased damage. And it also increases our secondary damage, which is Corpse Explosion. That's important fact. Then we have Topaz Flask again. This is for all those 3 element flasks are to increase our max res to 83. And here we have reduced effect of curses because we don't like this. We are barely above the limit of of resistances, right? So yeah, with the flasks on we have a lot, but if you disable the flasks, you can see we are like 4, 5, and yeah, 39 for fire. So we are not that you know, above the threshold to be able to hold the curses, right? I forgot about Pantheon. So because I have fire attunement on my Megalomaniac, I'm not affected by Burning Ground. So normally there are two options for Pantheon. You either go with reflected damage for, of course, reflect elemental damage. So elemental damage won't kill you, but it's still, let's say, I mean, it's not convenient to spam your life flask like this. So you're better off allocating this Pantheon for the map and changing it for everything else to Burning Ground. So it requires you swapping the Pantheon, unfortunately. With this Megalomaniac, I'm basically getting this by this node, so I can play with this. And here we have 30% reduced effect of curses, and going back to our flask, that caps to 90%. So, you know, the curses you can roll on the map are basically only 10% of effective equal to 10%. So yeah, this is quite good for our defenses. Yeah, so I already explained all the sockets here. I don't think I missed anything, so that's no brainer. So for skills, yeah, we use auras. This is just to add 8%. Maybe I can show it in here actually. So we use this mastery that gives us 8% increased damage for each aura or herald skill affecting us, right? So vitality, clarity, or you can even feed precision into the build for additional 8%. It's just to increase that. And again, this is increased damage, so increases our corpus explosions. And Plague Bearer is our emergency skill. So if you have like single monsters leaking, you basically pop up your Plague Bearer. It gives a little bit of, how to say, upfront damage, right? So once you stacked poison on your enemies, you stack your Plague Bearer, then you press Plague Bearer, it deals not that much chaos damage, but it can help, right? So together with now Herald of Agony and you know, increases to your chaos damage, that helps to kill off individual waves of monsters or waves of monsters or individual monsters leaking or coming to your pump, right? Because we are stationary near it, you only need to press it once and forget about it. I think it's not mandatory, it's something I found useful. Then for movement we have Whirling Blades with faster attacks. Again, I don't even have quality, I should have quality in here for even faster movements. But yeah, this is faster attacks are optionally, I guess, if you have something else to put in here. I don't even know what to add to this build. It's so good now that I think it's good to have faster attacks, even though this is mostly to optimize your looting, right? So I'm not using that much when clearing the map. I'd rather travel with my Flame Dash. However, when you loot, I use Flame Dash and Whirling Blades, or when my Flame Dash is on cooldown, I'm just using Whirling Blades, right? So yeah, this is mostly for looting. Then Cremation, and those are Awakened Gems. I think first week you're gonna be fine with normal version of the gems. They add a bit, but it's not like game changer. And again, because we have now Carcass Jack with Cruelty, not Inspiration here, you could swap to Inspiration if you still struggle with Energy Shield Recharge, so that's an option that you can have in mind. Then Malevolence in our boots for +1 level with Enlightened, Herald of Agony and Grace. Sure, I think you know, you can read, right? Malevolence gives you additional damage over time. Herald of Agony summons, you know, Herald of Agony, Agony Crawler, right? So it deals some damage. It helps you kill like those single leaking monsters. And yeah, again, we use Herald of Agony just because we have 70% increased damage with our ring, right? So that's the only reason, I guess. And Grace for evasion, right? And we are stationary, so evasion is nice. We would like more evasion, but I don't know where to get it from, so I guess it is what it is. Maybe Megalomaniac or stuff, you could, you know, get a bit more. Then Petrified Blood, it's kind of nice. You know, we don't use we just use petrified blood, right? So we don't use the flask. What was it called? I don't even remember. But yeah, there is this flask that costs, I believe, 100 divines. Oh, let's check. Let's check how much is it. Progenesis, right? So actually, it's not that expensive anymore. So it peaked somewhere. Not sure how much the divine was there, but yeah, it was way more expensive back then. I think it was 180, so it was 50 divines. Now it's like, I don't know, 30 divines or less. So yeah, so we don't use Progenesis, we don't have really slot for it, but this would make you way more tanky. I'm not sure what would have to, you know, probably Sulfur Flask, so get evasion on instead of spell damage leech, pop up your Progenesis in this slot, and this will make Petrified Blood way better, right? Other slots in our gloves: Unearth, faster casting. This is to open chests, which I showed you before, but again. So we have both Desecrate and Unearth, but Unearth is only used because it has such a low cast time, we can really spam, and the chest mastery only works at 25% of chance, right? So you need 4 casts to be, you know, to have 100% chance to open chest, and because it works, it's weird. Sometimes you need to cast it for a few seconds to open the chest, and mostly that's because of some obstacles like wall that you can't see, something on the ground that blocks you from the nodes. So I prefer to use, if the chest doesn't open for 1 or 2 seconds, just, you know, reposition yourself and it will open. Anyway, this is the setup: faster casting, also for our flame dash. So, you know, 1 support for 2 gems. I think this is kind of nice. Then we have Withering Step and Immortal Core on our cast when damage taken. I'm not sure, maybe the levels could be higher for more effectiveness. I use this and I don't care. That's kind of, you can let me know if I can use different levels. I haven't spent a lot of time figuring this out, so maybe maybe we could get it better. Yeah, and that's it, right? That's everything. I explained tree, I explained items, I explained skills. This was quite a long video. I went through all the iterations of the build. I didn't went through, you know, our Ascendancy, but that was the same since the original build guide. And yeah, I will upload the full run-through video so you can watch. And yeah, I will link everything and update old videos that will basically link to this video, because this is up-to-date video. This is, I think, the only video you need to watch. I tried to explain everything in this video. Maybe I forgot about something, but anyway, I find this build very good. It, you know, we can kill monsters off screen. That's very comfortable. That basically deals with every mod. So whatever is the best strategy to farm ravaged maps, it will deal well with it. It is very cheap early on. It has good upgrade progression. It's very cheap. I mean, this version is quite cheap as for what it does. And I guess, yeah, this would be a good build. And since it's been nerfed 3 leagues in a row, I would be really sad if they nerf it again. So let's hope this is our backup plan, or, you know, if anything goes wrong, this build works, right? So I will be testing Chieftain by the end of the league to see, you know, how it works, if I like it better, if I prefer to kill monsters off screen, or I prefer to, you know, if it's maybe the Chieftain is faster, although I need to measure time with this build as well. It's much quicker than the previous iterations. So let's see what is the difference. However, I believe, yeah, this is quite good foundation for the next league, and I'm happy I reached this moment, and I hope you liked this video. Of course, stay tuned for Blight-Ravaged videos, whether it comes to some tips and tricks and, you know, currency strategy overview, or Blight-Ravaged builds overview and stuff. So everything about Blight-Ravaged you will find on my channel, and subscribe and join our Discord, and, you know, stay tuned to the next video. Cheers everyone, bye.